99% of people believe they're too smart to be tricked, too careful to be targeted, too aware to become a victim. Yet every day, ordinary people get robbed, scammed, manipulated, followed, targeted. Not because they're unintelligent, but because they never saw it coming. Look around you. One person in a crowded street would be chosen first. Not because they're weak, not because they're small, but because they're sending signals they don't even know exist. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Criminals are often studying people long before a crime happens. Some former offenders claim they can identify an easy target within seconds, not by checking a bank account, not by knowing someone's job, not even by speaking to them, just by watching them walk. So before you leave your house tomorrow, before you enter a parking lot, before you walk through a crowded street, ask yourself one question. What does your walk reveal about you? Because if criminals were scanning the crowd right now, you might already be standing out. And later in this video, I'll reveal the one signal former offenders repeatedly mention when choosing victims. It's something millions of people do every day without realizing it. Most people imagine crime begins with a confrontation, a threat, a robbery, an attack. But often, it begins much earlier, with observation. Imagine you're standing inside a busy shopping center. Families pass by, students, office workers, tourists. To you, it's just a crowd. To a predator, it's information. Who is paying attention? Who is distracted? Who notices what's happening around them? Former offenders have repeatedly described looking for people who appear disconnected from their surroundings, not because they're weak, because they're easier to predict. Now think about the last time you walked through a parking lot. Were you observing your surroundings or looking at your phone, replying to messages, scrolling social media? Most people don't realize how much information they're broadcasting. When your attention is completely absorbed by a screen, you're sending a signal. You're telling the world you're not paying attention. And dangerous people notice that, because distraction creates opportunity. But phones are only part of the story. Movement matters too. People who constantly hesitate, appear lost, or seem unsure of where they're going often attract attention. Not because they're weak, because uncertainty is easier to read. But here's where things become more interesting. Many criminals don't immediately decide. They test first, and most people never realize it's happening. Imagine someone suddenly approaches and asks for directions. The question itself may be harmless, but sometimes the response is what matters. Do you completely stop? Do you focus entirely on them? Do you lose awareness of everything around you? Former offenders have described using small interactions to evaluate alertness and confidence. They're gathering information before making decisions, and that's unsettling. Because many attacks begin psychologically before they become physical. The victim often doesn't realize they've already been evaluated. But criminals don't just study people. They study environments. Think about it. If you wanted to avoid witnesses, where would you choose to operate? A crowded public square, or an isolated parking garage, a busy street, or a poorly lit pathway? The answer is obvious, which is why dangerous people often evaluate locations before they evaluate targets. Poor lighting, limited visibility, few witnesses, predictable exits. These conditions create opportunity, and many people unknowingly make things easier. They put on headphones, turn up the volume, look down at their phones, and mentally disconnect from the environment around them. It's almost like they're physically present, but mentally somewhere else. Now here's a question. Have you ever arrived somewhere and barely remembered the journey? Maybe you drove home, walked through a store, crossed several streets, yet remember almost none of it. Psychologists call this operating on autopilot, and almost everyone does it. Your body moves, but your attention goes somewhere else. Work, money, relationships, tomorrow's problems, anything except what's happening right now. And this may be one of the biggest hidden dangers of all, because predators often look for people who have mentally left the environment, people who aren't truly present, people whose attention is already occupied. And now, we arrive at the signal I mentioned earlier, the one former offenders repeatedly describe: predictability. Think about your routine. Do you leave home at the same time every day? Walk the same route? Park in the same place? Use the same shortcut? Most people do. It's natural. But routine creates patterns, and patterns make people easier to understand. The more predictable someone becomes, the easier they are to anticipate. And the easier they are to anticipate, the easier they become to study. This doesn't mean you should live in fear. It means you should remain aware, because danger rarely appears without warning. Often there are signals. The problem is that most people never notice them. So let's return to the original question. Can criminals really identify easy targets just by the way they walk? Maybe. But perhaps that's the wrong question. Because what they're actually noticing isn't just movement. It's awareness, attention, presence, confidence, predictability. They're reading signals people unknowingly broadcast every day. And the good news is that those signals can change instantly. The moment you start paying attention, you become different from most people around you. Most people will walk outside tomorrow exactly the same way they did yesterday, distracted, lost in thought, completely unaware of what's happening around them. But you're different now. Because once you understand how predators think, you'll notice the distracted people, the predictable routines, the subtle tests, the things most people miss. And that's powerful. Not because it makes you fearless, but because awareness is something criminals hate. They depend on surprise. They depend on distraction. They depend on people who never see them coming. The fact that you've watched this far already puts you ahead of most people. Most viewers will forget everything they've heard today. But if you remember even one thing from this video, you'll already be more aware than the majority of people around you. So the next time you step outside, don't just walk, observe, because the safest people aren't always the strongest. They're the ones who notice what everyone else misses. And once you start doing that, you'll never look at a crowd the same way again. Before we end, I want you to try something. The next time you're in a crowded place, a shopping mall, a train station, a parking lot, or just a busy street, stop for 5 seconds and look around, not at the crowd, at the people inside the crowd. You'll notice someone staring at their phone, someone rushing without looking, someone completely lost in thought, someone who has no idea who's behind them 5 minutes ago. That person might have been you. But not anymore. Because once you learn what predators look for, you'll start seeing invisible patterns. Who is paying attention? Who isn't? Who is aware? Who is operating on autopilot? And suddenly you'll realize something strange. The crowd hasn't changed, but you have. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Not that criminals are studying people, but that most people never study themselves. So tomorrow, when you walk out your front door, ask yourself one question. If a criminal watched me for 30 seconds, would he think I'm an easy target? The answer might reveal more than you think. If you enjoy exploring the hidden psychology that shapes everyday life and beat criminals at their own game, subscribe. Before they target you, notice them. Before they trap you, surprise them.